Hi and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave and this is episode 1103A, and today's date is October 17th, 2016, and the title of the episode is Central Banker Insiders Have Indicated That Major Inflation is Headed Our Way. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, as we continually follow this economy, we are realizing that each and every sector of the economy is now failing. Now, in the beginning, when we started looking at this, we saw one or two, and it creeped up to 4 or 5, and now we're starting to see that all the different economic sectors now, they're all showing signs that this economy is deteriorating, it's imploding, it's collapsing, and we can see right now that people, when they lose their job, they don't want to, take their money, go out and spend. We see it in retail. We see stores closing. And then, of course, no one saw it in the restaurant industry right off the bat. People are like, well, the economy's still doing well. Restaurants are still doing well. So there really can't be a problem. Well, we're starting to see now that this is the way it happens, where people lose their jobs or people get a part-time job and they say, something, I don't need the HD TV, I don't need a Blu-ray player, but you know what? I still need food, I will still go out to eat, and they continually keep that up. As more and more people lose their jobs, as people find it more difficult to find jobs, as people are working the part-time jobs, they start to cut back in other areas because we see other things increasing in cost, insurance, rent, mortgage, electric, gas, so on. And we see in the restaurant industry that the data right now, which is coming from the National Restaurant Association, and it's called the Restaurant Performance Index, and we talked about it before. Well, it's painting a disturbing picture. And what we're seeing right now is that in August, restaurant sales, they completely tumbled in August. They slid to the lowest level since the financial crisis. And the Restaurant Association reports that due in large part to declines in both same-store sales and customer traffic, the National Restaurant Association Restaurant Performance Index fell below 100 in August. Now, in September, we see that this has slid even further. And what this is telling us is that the situation is getting worse as time goes on. Because August represents the 4th consecutive month in which restaurant operators reported a net decline in customer traffic. September is the 5th consecutive month. So we're seeing retail has been hit, the restaurants have been hit, and most likely we're going to see restaurants, they're going to start shutting down, just like we've seen stores shutting down. And we can see right now that manufacturing, industrial production, it is just all declining right now. Now, industrial production, well, that has just contracted for the 13th straight month in a row. This is the longest non-recessionary streak in U.S. history. And we can see right now that all of this is pointing to one thing and one thing only. That is an economic collapse. In many of these economic indicators that we've been looking at, they are either equal to or worse than 2008 right now. And the only thing that's keeping the economy looking like it's doing much, much better is the ability to manipulate the stock market, the ability to manipulate unemployment, the ability to manipulate GDP. And all of these numbers are manipulated because what the U.S. government, what the central bankers learned back in 2008 was how to manipulate the economy to create an illusion that the economy is doing well. And they've done this very well. And most of the population believes that the economy is doing well. And many people believe it, but many people also feel that something is wrong, because those people who still have jobs, they're putting out their resume and they're saying, why can't I find another job equal to what I have or something better? Because in the past, you were able to send out your resume and either get the same type of job, or you go and find the same job with higher pay. That's one of the main reasons why you would like to leave a job. But many people cannot find this. We see that the Empire Fed, well, there was a dead cat bounce back in June, but since that time period, the Empire Fed has been declining. They were expecting a positive 1. It dropped to negative 6.8. And we can see right now that the Empire Fed, industrial production, the Restaurant Performance Index, retail, manufacturing, corporate defaults, delinquencies in the auto industry, the derivative bubble, the stock bubble, the treasury bubble, all of this is coming to a head right now. How much longer can the central banks keep this up? Most likely not that much longer. And we talked about this before. The central banks, they need more power. They need more power to control the economy, because they know the people will not be able to push this economy to the next level. And what does that really mean? It means keep the manipulation going to make it look like the economy is doing well. And they know the people aren't going to be doing this because too many people are losing jobs, too many retail stores are closing, and all the indicators are showing us that this economy is dead in the water. Now, there are two major central banks, insiders inside the central banks, in the Bank of England and the U.S. Federal Reserve. They have given clear signals that they want inflation. And they're prepared to tolerate higher inflation over the next few years than they originally wanted. They don't mind if it goes much, much higher. Now, what they're really saying is that inflation is going to happen anyway, because what's happening around the world is that those countries that are dealing with the petro-dollar, those countries that keep the dollar in reserve, those dollars are going to start floating back to the United States. Because we can see right now that the United States has lost control in the Middle East. And once control is completely lost, countries are going to no longer deal in the dollar to sell their natural resources. And we see that the Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, we can see the Bank of Japan, and the rest of the central banks, they're going to have no choice. But the United States is going to see inflation. And once inflation starts, they're not going to be able to just turn a switch and say, okay, this is all we want. What's going to happen next is that inflation is going to continue on. It's going to run hot for a while, might even turn into hyperinflation. And what this really means is that the value of the dollar is going to decrease, which means products are going to be much, much more expensive. And we can see right now that the central banks are out there telling people this, that they want inflation, they don't mind inflation, and it's coming because there's no way to stop it. And we see right now, once they let the genie out of the bottle, and all these dollars start coming, flooding back to the United States, it's going to be very difficult for people to survive. And at this point, this signal from the central banks should tell you something. It should tell you to start to purchase the items now, because you don't want to be caught in a situation where all of a sudden you want to go and purchase food and you find out that bread is $50, milk is $90, because this eventually will happen. Because once inflation hit, and we've seen it before, this is not the first time. We've seen it in Germany. We've seen it around the world. We've seen it back in the 1970s. But of course, this was the beginning of the fiat system, but this is the end game of the fiat system, where we have so much debt, where wages are going the opposite way, they're declining, where we have so many bubbles, they're ready to pop, and they can't control the system. So right now, we see many things occurring all at once. We have the elections coming up, and we know right now that the U.S., those people in power, the elite, the globalists, the shadow government, they're going to do whatever they possibly can to make sure they have the puppet in place that will take orders. If they cannot get that puppet, yes, and I call them puppets because they're not really in control of what's going on here. If they can't get that puppet in power, they're going to postpone these elections. Or if they do let the elections go through, most likely they'll get rid of that candidate that they don't want, if that candidate actually makes it through. But we can see already they're laying the groundwork for what is coming. And they realize that this economy that we're in right now is not going to be able to continually chug along here. It's going to collapse one way or another. They rather have it their way, where they can bring it down, where they can control it as it comes down, where they can say, listen, the financial system was hit, we know who did it. And of course, as you know, once they tell you this, it's completely fake, phony, and false, because you can't just figure it out that fast. But they'll have everything prepared and ready to go. They've been preparing for this for a very long time. And we see right now that if you're not prepared at this point, you need to get prepared for what is coming. And I'm talking food, water, a weapon to protect your family, cash on hand, gold and silver, medical supplies, toiletries, whatever you can get your hands on. You need to have some of this. Now, how long will this last? We don't know for sure. So I would say 6 months worth of supplies at the minimum. And you will need cash in the beginning, because stores, people out there, they will still recognize the paper dollar. And they'll deal in the paper dollar. You don't want to take your gold and silver and put it out there, because people won't understand it yet. So that is your insurance policy. That's something that you keep and you hold on to. And if you need more supplies, if there's anything that you can find out there, you use your paper money. And make sure you have things to barter with, because this is what this system's going to turn out to be. Because remember, when the system comes down, credit's going to freeze up. It froze up in 2008. But this time, it's going to be much worse, where the whole thing is just going to come to a screeching halt, and credit is going to freeze up. Now, I did an interview with Bill Holter on the X22 Report Spotlight, and if you want to go there, you can listen to what he says about credit. But when credit freezes up, the entire country is run on credit. So deliveries, bank loans, auto loans, building, manufacturing, all of this is tied to credit. And when that freezes up, the system is frozen. Nothing can be done. And we can see that we're heading in this direction. And that time period is coming closer and closer. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.